What is fulvic acid? Fulvic acid is an organic acid. It is the end result of actual very bottom, last rung on the ladder of decomposition of organic material. Okay, as organic material composts or decomposes into more concentrated forms, the very last end of all that decomposition is fulvic acid. It is the culmination of thousands of years of decomposition of organic material. And what happens is you take thousands of tons of organic material and it all gets concentrated down into fulvic acid. Fulvic acid is a carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen molecule. It's a nanomolecule, and we extract it from humic shale. And humic shale is decomposed organic material that has been close enough to the surface to be acted on by the microbes in the soil. Very similar to crude oil and coal, how those things are produced. It's organic material under the ground. Okay, the difference here is humic shale was up close to the surface, where oil and coal were under, far enough under the surface. They were under enough compression that it would create petroleum or coal. Okay, in this case, we have humic shale, and humic shale is high in humic acid, which contains fulvic acid. Okay, humic acid is a fairly large molecule. It's predominantly carbon. It's a carbon, hydrogen, oxygen molecule. It's pretty large. But it contains this nanomolecule called fulvic acid. What does fulvic acid do? Fulvic acid in our body regulates our body's pH. Okay, fulvic acid itself is a very acidic substance. Usually, we have one fulvic acid solution that's a 0.3 pH. It's extremely acidic and, again, totally safe to take internally because fulvic acid modulates the body's pH. So whatever the optimal pH would be of said tissue, let's say your liver or your stomach, okay, they're going to have very different optimal pHs. Inside of your stomach needs to be a very low pH, whereas your liver needs to maintain a fairly neutral pH. And when fulvic acid gets into whichever organ it gets into, it optimizes the pH in those organs. So we have pH balance. The next is fulvic acid is a superconductor. It's a very, very powerful electrolyte. It conducts electricity. Although there are no electrolytes in it, it's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. It's not a potassium, sodium, magnesium, calcium, anything like that. Not those types of electrolytes. It's a superconductor made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And as such, it works to recharge our cells. So our cells actually carry an electrical charge. Once they've been infiltrated by fulvic acid, and we've absorbed fulvic acid into our body, it's saturated our body. Fulvic acid enables our cells to carry an electrical charge longer than the cell would normally carry a charge. The longer a cell carries an optimal electrical charge, the longer the cell survives. Okay, so when it comes to prevention of all kinds of degenerative conditions, the longer you can cause the cells in the body to survive, the fewer or the longer it takes for degenerative conditions to start to show up. Also, it acts as it becomes a therapeutic agent against those degenerative processes in the body. So we have pH balance, electrochemical balance. Next is number 3 and 4. They're interwoven. They're combined. Fulvic acid acts as the FedEx man in your nutritional system, okay? Fulvic acid can bond to 60 times its weight in nutrition and transport it to the cell and even into the organelles within the cell. In doing this, in transporting these nutrients, it acts, like I said, as a FedEx man delivering the package. Okay, brings the package to the necessary site, okay, wherever it needs to go. And once it delivers that package, okay, there's 60 receptor sites that fulvic acid has. Okay, if we load all 60 receptor sites with nutrients, and those nutrients get delivered, fulvic acid is a carbon-based compound. And one thing about carbon for everyone to remember is the question with carbon isn't what can carbon bond to, it's what can't carbon bond to. Carbon bonds to everything. Okay, and basically what I tell people is this is a 60-passenger bus that's full of nutrients, okay, and every time it drops off a nutrient, it has an empty seat. But those empty seats have to be full. So when it drops off those nutrients, when the FedEx man delivers his package, okay, when we drop off one of these nutrients, it picks up waste or toxic material and fills that seat. Okay, so it doubles FedEx man and garbage man. Okay, so there's both nutrient delivery system happening here and toxic remediation happening. So we get, with fulvic acid, we have delivery of nutrients, but then we also have removal of toxic materials. And so those are number 3 and 4 that fulvic acid does. Number 5 is our entire body is made up of 3 basic components. This is how I teach nutrition. Our primary basic component, the one component that we have the highest amount of in our body, is water. The next one's dirt. If you look at the periodic table, that's what dirt's made of, and that's exactly what our body's made of. Okay, our body is made of, I tell people the periodic table is the body's ingredient list. Okay, all those different elements are what our body is made of. And if you're missing pieces of the puzzle, you're going to get sick. Okay, so we have to replace all of those elements at some point. Okay, what about like the different elements on the periodic table? Aren't there some that are toxic and some that are healthy, some that are toxic, right? Well, in reality, everything on the periodic table, depending on the form it is in, is either toxic or beneficial. Okay, you can become toxic with anything on the periodic table, even if it's, calcium. Calcium can be toxic depending on the form it is in. Okay, you got it would take a significant amount of calcium to make you toxic, but calcium, dependent on the form it comes in, is potential, could become toxic. Mercury, on the other hand, is toxic in almost any form. We haven't discovered what that does in the body, except for break things down and make them go bad. But we haven't discovered what exactly it's used. Its necessity is for. It has to be necessity because it's on the periodic table, but we don't know what that is yet. What we do know is that minerals in the form of salts are they become toxic very easily. Okay, they build up in the system real quickly. Okay, minerals in an ionic form don't build up in the body as quickly. Okay, and they're easier for the body to transport. They're smaller packages. Okay, Now let me talk about that real quick before we move on to number 5. One of the things that fulvic acid does when you take it internally is it ionizes those salts that are built up in the body. Okay, in the mitochondria, the power generator for the cell, where the part of the cell that generates ATP or cellular energy, that generator uses nutrients. Okay, it spends nutrients. Nutrients get fed into the generator, kind of into the furnace and get spent. And when they're spent, those spent nutrients become free radicals or things that can damage the rest of the system. In the within the mitochondria, when those nutrients become free radicals, they become fragments of the original material, and those fragments start floating around looking for something else to level it out, to balance it out, because it's it's like a 3-legged chair. It's missing a leg, and so it has to have that other leg. It needs another peg in it, and so as they're bouncing around, they'll bump up against the tissue of the cell, or the membranes and whatnot, and rob nutrients to balance them out. Well, that causes cellular damage. And fulvic acid has the capacity of being able to repair those free radicals, turning them back into nutrition. Another thing that fulvic acid does with salts is it turns salts, it ionizes salt back into usable nutrition. Okay, when you have salt build up, wherever salt builds up, you start calcifying, which is not good. Like think of an aorta as it coming, the main artery coming out of the heart. Well, as the salt builds up in it, it starts to calcify, and all of a sudden it doesn't expand and contract when your heart expands and contracts. That's not good. If you get a calcium deposit in your shoulder, okay, or in a joint, it causes arthritis. It's terrible. It's not good. Fulvic acid ionizes those types of deposits, turns them back into usable nutrients. Doesn't do it immediately. It takes time. These are deposits. We demonstrated this in an agricultural experiment. We took some salt. We worked down in the salt flats here in Nevada. We treated 5 acres of salt flats with a fulvic acid solution, and we sprayed the salt flat with our fulvic acid solution, and then we seeded the salt flat with heirloom alfalfa seeds, which don't grow in a salty environment. And we later on that year harvested a crop of alfalfa that grew on a salt flat. We had 18 to 24 inches of salt that had to work through. When we were done with our treatment of that soil, or that salt flat, it wasn't soil, it was soil when we were done with it, we had about 6 to 8 inches of black topsoil. We had converted that salt flat, that salt, into usable nutrients, and it does the same thing in our body. Back to the components of the body, we have water, we have the periodic table, okay, or dirt, and then moving on to number 5, the 5th thing that fulvic acid does in our body is it works with our 3rd component. Our 3rd component is microbes. Depending on which textbooks you study now, there are anywhere from 10 up to 100 times more microbes in our body than there are cells. And those microbes, dependent on the internal environment of our body, can either be helpful in rebuild our genetics, even our DNA, and rebuild our tissues and produce the enzymes that build up our body and repair our body and everything, or they can produce everything that causes our body to fall apart and deteriorate. And it all is dependent on the internal environment of our body. Well, that internal environment is dependent on a couple of things. One is your pH. Another is your nutrition, the amount of nutrients and the amount of usable nutrients in your body. Another is the rate of oxidation. Okay, and oxidation happens as a result of chemicals breaking down in the body. Okay, but those free radicals I talked about earlier, produced by the mitochondria as it burns through nutrients, well, that creates oxidative damage. That's what that damage is. That's why we call things that neutralize free radicals, we call them antioxidants, because they reduce oxidative damage. Okay, so your rate of oxidative damage in your body, your nutrition, and also your pH, those things are the most influential. They influence the microbes in our body more than anything else. Okay, depending on those three things: pH, nutrition, and your rate of oxidation. Okay, those three things will determine which direction your microbes go, whether they become, life building or life decomposing. Okay, they're either going to rebuild you and keep building you up, or they're going to tear you down, depending on your pH, your nutritional profile, and your rate of oxidation. One of the other things that affects our rate of oxidation is toxicity. When toxins are in your bloodstream, they're floating around in your bloodstream, okay? Everything that they hit, they damage. Okay, so it's kind of like having a spiky burr bounce around in your bloodstream. Okay, and everywhere it hits, it bumps. Okay, it irritates everything. Okay, and that irritation creates more oxidation. Okay, and so all toxins, that's how they damage our body. They cause our cells to oxidize faster than they should. Okay, and therefore the cells break down faster. Therefore they have to be repaired. Therefore you become fatigued. That's the fatigue process. That's what causes so much fatigue in a toxicity issue. Is so many cells are being broken down because of being exposed to these toxins that your body has to spend all that energy in nutrition and all, has to break the bank almost to rebuild those cells and everything. It takes a lot of energy. So the three things that massively affect our microbes are our pH, our nutrition, and our rate of oxidation. Okay. Rate of oxidation, the higher our rate of oxidation, the more waste gets developed in our body. Okay, as the waste builds up, our pH drops. Okay, it changes the environment. Okay, that's one of the first things. Remember, pH is one of the first things. So that as that pH drops because of the waste building up in the system, it starts to negatively affect our microbes. So with fulvic acid modulates the pH, okay, so regulates it, raises it up or down, whichever direction it needs to go to fit the microbes in the body, okay? And so if we can set the right environment for those microbes that build up our body, which is what fulvic acid does, we have an anti-aging effect, we have disease prevention effect, we have a remedial effect on existing conditions. We have improvement of function and all these different things that happens with this. fulvic acid acts as the delivery man and the trash man, the garbage man. And so we're correcting that nutrition on one hand, but we also start correcting that rate of oxidation, that toxicity issue also with fulvic acid. What I've done with my formulas here is all my formulas, I have bound different components to fulvic acid to create these different formulas. Like Super Earth Energy has, I've bound various minerals, chromium, zinc, magnesium, and then B vitamins are bound to fulvic acid, and along with binding the medicinal mushroom, which is an adaptogen, helps the body adapt to all kinds of stress, cordyceps, to fulvic acid, and that's what my Super Earth Energy is made of. That's what we've done here. So when you take the Super Earth Energy, the fulvic acid delivers these components to whatever cell in your body needs them. And so you get the specific nutrition from the cordyceps mushrooms, which enhance immune system, enhance the ability to metabolize oxygen, enhance all these different abilities to withstand stress or adapt to stress. Which I don't know, in our environment today, we have 4 seasons, just like they always had, but then we have all kinds of crazy things happening all day long, and we sit at desks and work while we drink coffee all day long, and people are geared for stressed to be stressed and overstressed, and so when they get out of work, they don't adapt to going home very well because they're all keyed up and stressed from being at the office and drinking coffee all day. Not that I'm against drinking coffee, but excessive stimulants, excessive stimulation, and people they're not eating right, so they have all these different stressors happening, and so we're a whole society of stressed out people, and we desperately need help adapting. And so that's what our Super Earth Energy that's how I designed that. That's what it was designed for. In Flamagon, my other formula in Flamagon, we have curcuminoids, which are a very large molecule and difficult to absorb in the intestines. But curcuminoids are one of the best anti-inflammatory compounds known to man. I had a lot of patients that had a hard time taking enough curcumin to get a therapeutic benefit without causing their gut to go nuts. It just tore up their stomach. And so we took and bound the curcuminoids to fulvic acid, and also bound boswellic acid from boswellia or frankincense oil, and then some other Amazonian herbs. We came up with my Inflamagon formula, and it's very well tolerated. Most people don't ever have any trouble taking that, and it both functions very well in, from a therapeutic standpoint, but also it's very well tolerated. And then finally, my digestive detox is a humic acid-based formula, which humic acid does have fulvic acid. That's what we extract the fulvic acid from. We actually we have 400 different humic acid substances that we start with in our extraction process to create our fulvic acid. And our reasoning for doing that is we wanted as many phytonutrients, as many DNA fragments, as much information in our fulvic acid as possible. And so we took it we were grabbing information from 400 different sources to make our fulvic acid. But this humic substance that we're using in digestive detox, the reason we're using humic in this is the humic molecule is so large it doesn't leave the gut. And it lays the groundwork to become a prebiotic. It sets the environment in the gut to be perfect for growing beneficial microbes, all those good microbes in our gut. Okay, and it also is very healing. If you research humic acid for gut issues, leaky gut, liver issues, colitis, all the itises in the GI tract, including esophagitis. It's very, very healing for all of those issues. And so we took and compounded humic acid along with, we have Cascara sagrada, slippery elm bark, milk thistle, and buckthorn, and different things that are also very cleansing and healing of the digestive tract, and that's digestive detox. And then our equalizer concentrate is our liquid form. It's straight fulvic acid, and what we did with that is we added back the trace elements. So we get a large portion of the periodic table in one supplement. And so that's our fulvic acid supplements that we have available at this point in time. And we have very shortly here, we have a fulvic acid, humic acid based probiotic. We have a few other things coming down the pike. We have quite a few. We have a total of 40 different formulas that are en route, but at this point in time, we just have the 4 of them at work. So thank you, and thanks for tuning in. And stay tuned. There's much more to come.